Do you think the Wild West is just about high noon duels and horse races through muddy streets? Get ready to be surprised. The American frontier of the 19th century was full of urban legends, contradictory characters, and events so bizarre they could outshine any Hollywood script. Today, we're diving into 25 eerie and little-known stories that reveal a West stranger, bloodier, and more fascinating than ever. Grab your saddle, adjust your hat, and get ready for an unforgettable ride. Number 1. Belle Starr wasn't just bold. She defied every rule of a society that feared strong women. Raised in a wealthy family but surrounded by rebellious spirits like Jesse James, she threw herself into a life of crime. The sound of her silver spurs on the trails scandalized the more conservative folks, especially when she dressed like a man. Sharp and cunning, she planned robberies and escapes that kept sheriffs on high alert. But her death was as dark as her life. A shotgun blast to the back and no clear answers to this day. Some believe vengeful enemies hunted her down. Others point to family disputes. Still, Belle Starr's name echoed like a cry through the Wild West, immortalized as the Bandit Queen, a woman who dared to step out of line at a time when that could cost her life. Number 2. Have you ever heard about a nearly forgotten chapter of the Wild West? When we think of Deadwood, South Dakota, we usually picture miners, gamblers, and legends like Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane. But here's what few people know. At the height of the gold rush, a vibrant Chinese community flourished there, bringing exotic cuisine, unique traditions, and businesses ranging from tea houses to tempting opium dens, irresistible to the curious and the debt-ridden. However, this minority lived in segregated ghettos, facing brutal prejudice and violent conflicts when the streets turned into battlefields at night. Mixed with the frantic hunt for gold, these cultural tensions created a boiling pot of risks and opportunities. Today, local museums display artifacts from that era, revealing a past that's rarely remembered, and proving that diversity in the Wild West was far more impressive than Hollywood usually portrays. Number 3. Mary Fields, immortalized as Stagecoach Mary, embodied unshakable courage, a black woman nearly 6 feet tall with enough strength to silence any troublemaker. She worked at a religious mission in Montana, but it was when she became the first woman, and one of the few black people, to drive a mail route through the wild frontier that her legend was born. Smoking cigars and always ready to draw her revolver, Mary landed the job with the Postal Service after winning a shooting contest, outgunning several men. They say she never backed down. Anyone who threatened her stagecoach or tried to steal the mail had to face her deadly aim. Respected in Cascade, Montana, just her presence in a saloon was enough to shut down any brewing trouble. To this day, her legacy fuels movie scripts and inspires generations with a powerful example of female strength in the Wild West. Number 4. Known as El Muerto. In some parts, this gruesome tale gripped the imagination of South Texas. The story goes that a feared outlaw was captured by a Texas Ranger, and in a cruel act of retaliation, was beheaded before his body was tied tightly to a horse. That horrifying sight wandered the plains for days, maybe even weeks. Under the moonlight, travelers shuddered at the sight of a headless figure, arms hanging limply, as if still alive. Some even swore that gunshots passed right through the ghost without effect. While local legends may have exaggerated the details, the mere thought of encountering this headless rider became a recurring nightmare for merchants and wanderers. Even today, in certain counties, some people avoid mentioning his name after dark. Number 5. In the late 19th century, 2 top paleontologists, Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh, were locked in such an intense rivalry that it became known as the Bone Wars. Competing to discover new dinosaur species in the harsh lands of the American West, mainly Wyoming and Colorado, they hired diggers and informants, engaging in dramatic acts of sabotage, blowing up each other's excavation sites, bribing teams to steal fossils, and spreading false rumors to scare off competitors. Though it sounds like the plot of an adventure movie, this obsession led to groundbreaking scientific discoveries, unearthing dozens of new species. But it also left behind a trail of intrigue and ruin. Cope and Marsh ended their careers with tarnished reputations, yet their findings filled museums with treasures, forever cementing the Wild West as the stage for a real-life Jurassic race. Number 6. Lottie Deno was celebrated as one of the most ruthless poker players in the Wild West. She made a name for herself around 1860 in the smoky saloons of San Antonio and Dodge City, where her mesmerizing talent and almost hypnotic composure fascinated and terrified anyone who dared sit at her table. Unlike many women who relied on charm, Lottie showcased razor-sharp skills and an intuitive ability to read every flicker in her opponent's eyes, raking in jaw-dropping winnings in a single night. Her nickname, Deno, is said to have come from the word money, thanks to the almost magical way she stacked her chips. Though she made her living at the tables, stories tell of her bravely standing up to a gunman to defend a young woman who was being assaulted, proving that behind her tough exterior, she had a heart. At some point, she reportedly married another gambler and left the saloons behind, but her mystery still echoes through the legendary tales of the Old West. Number 7. Born into slavery, Isom Dart dared to escape and carve out his own version of freedom as a cowboy. He became known for his incredible skill with a lasso and his ability to break wild broncos that others deemed untamable. At the same time, there are records of his involvement in bold cattle thefts, using his talents to drive stolen herds. This history made him a target of vigilante groups, who blamed him for the mysterious disappearance of livestock in Brown's Hole between Colorado and Utah. A man of contradictions, respected as a cowboy, yet accused of crimes against ranchers. In the end, Isom Dart was ambushed and killed by Tom Horn, a notorious hired gun. His story highlights the important but often overlooked presence of black and mixed-race cowboys in the West, far from the version Hollywood usually portrays. Number 8. From 1875 to 1896, the feared Judge Isaac Charles Parker ruled with an iron fist in the Federal District Court of Fort Smith, Arkansas, earning the grim nickname, the Hanging Judge. Convinced that harsh punishments, especially the gallows, were the best way to bring law and order to crime-ridden territories, he sentenced over 70 people to hang in his 21 years on the bench, sending a clear message that no one would escape justice. However, he also fought for thorough investigations and victim protection, showing a paradoxical mix of relentless justice and a reputation as a ruthless executioner. Some reports suggest he avoided watching the hangings, though he never hesitated to hand down the sentences. His death in 1896 didn't erase his controversial legacy, which left a lasting mark on the history of justice in the Wild West, stirring both fear and respect. Number 9. Around 1856, the U.S. Army made a bold move by importing camels from the Middle East to help conquer the Arizona desert. When the project collapsed, many of the animals were left to wander under the unforgiving sun. This gave rise to the chilling legend of the Red Ghost, a massive red-hued camel roaming the plains, dragging the skeleton of a soldier still strapped to its saddle. Shocked locals reported shattered fences, massive hoofprints, and eerie tracks in the sand. Some even swore they saw the creature from a distance, its head swaying as it let out ghostly wails. With each sighting, the folklore grew, turning the legend into something almost unstoppable. To this day, the tale of the Red Ghost lingers in Arizona's saloons and campfire stories, a reminder that the Wild West held more mysteries than just horses and buffalo. Sometimes even camels haunted unsuspecting travelers. Number 10. During the legendary Lincoln County War in New Mexico, one of the most feared groups was the Regulators, which included famous names like Billy the Kid and Jose Chavez y Chavez. Among them was Josiah Doc Scurlock, a former Texas schoolteacher who became a sharp, fearless gunslinger. Considered the most level-headed member of the group, he didn't hesitate to fight back after the killing of John Tunstall, taking part in brutal shootouts and dangerous ambushes. Old letters from Scurlock reveal his inner turmoil over the escalating violence, but he believed he had no choice in the face of local injustices. After the war, Doc sought a quiet life, but the stigma of riding alongside Billy the Kid followed him. His story proves that in the Old West, even educated men could be drawn into deadly conflicts, whether for loyalty or survival. Number 11. Considered ruthless legends of the Old West, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid led the infamous Wild Bunch, robbing banks and trains without mercy. The official story says that after fleeing to South America, both were cornered by the Bolivian army in 1908 and died in a brutal shootout. However, countless theories suggest that one or even both of them escaped, returning to the U.S. under fake identities. Every now and then, someone claims to be Cassidy, sharing eerily accurate details about the crimes and fellow outlaws. While historians remain divided on the truth of these stories, and excavations of supposed graves have never produced conclusive evidence, the fascination only grows. After all, who wouldn't love the idea of the West's boldest outlaws living out their days peacefully on remote farms, free from pursuit? Number 12. During the feverish gold and silver mining boom, entire towns sprang up from the barren landscape, luring thousands of fortune-hungry adventurers. But the moment the veins dried up or the mines were abandoned, these places became ghost towns in the blink of an eye. Bodie, California is a haunting example. Saloons, hotels, and even a church remain just as they were left. Today, visitors report chills as they walk through the empty streets, filled with dusty furniture, forgotten photos, and echoes of shattered dreams. Many swear they feel restless spirits wandering among the ruins, and there's no shortage of stories about doors slamming on their own or eerie whispers in the dead of night. Number 13. Edward Zane Carroll Judson, best known as Ned Buntline, was the bold writer behind the famous dime novels, cheap, wildly entertaining books packed with adventure. He saw real-life figures like Buffalo Bill, Wyatt Earp, and others as gold mines for creating instant legends. In the big cities of the East, readers devoured every tale, hungry for deadly duels, ruthless outlaws, and patriotic heroes. His massive success led Buntline to invest in theatrical performances, paving the way for what Buffalo Bill would later perfect with his Wild West show. While he took plenty of creative liberties, it was precisely that storytelling flair that turned the fearless, gun-slinging cowboy into a universal icon. In doing so, Ned Buntline etched his name into history, shaping the Wild West as we know it through the captivating lens of pop culture. Number 14. Martha Jane Cannery stands as one of the most legendary figures of the Old West. Known as Calamity Jane, she lived life on her own terms, serving as a scout for the Army, driving stagecoaches, and according to some accounts, even working as a nurse during deadly cholera outbreaks. Her fame grew even more alongside the legendary Wild Bill Hickok, as well as through her own daring feats, often wrapped in heroic myth. Wearing baggy pants, drinking without a care, yet always ready to help the wounded or rescue lost travelers, she was both rugged and compassionate. Calamity Jane embodies the independent woman of the West, though historians still debate the truth behind many of her stories. Some idolizing her, others dismissing her as an exaggeration. Either way, her name will forever echo as a symbol of adventure and bravery. Number 15. The Pinkertons. Founded in 1850 by Alan Pinkerton, this feared private detective agency gained a ruthless reputation for hunting down legendary criminals like Jesse James and the Wild Bunch Gang. But their work didn't stop there. The Pinkertons protected trains, conducted industrial espionage, and aggressively crushed labor strikes, often with violent tactics. With their motto, "We never sleep," and their iconic open-eye logo, the agency even inspired the term "private eye." Their daring strategies, networks of informants, disguises, and undercover infiltrations, were groundbreaking at the time. In some places, the Pinkertons were praised for fighting crime. In others, they were despised for suppressing labor movements and using excessive force. This duality secured the agency a lasting legacy, one that endured even as official law enforcement agencies grew in power. Number 16. John Henry Tunstall, a young and ambitious English rancher, dared to set up his business in New Mexico, going head-to-head with heavyweights like Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan. When Tunstall was brutally murdered under mysterious circumstances, his employees, including the legendary Billy the Kid and the fearless Doc Scurlock, swore revenge, forming the infamous Regulators. And just like that, the Lincoln County War, 1878, erupted, plunging the Old West into a whirlwind of betrayals, ambushes, and power struggles. Tunstall's murder set the entire region on fire, exposing the elite's abuse of power and the deep corruption among local authorities. His short but tragic life, cut short at just 24 years old, became the stuff of legend, inspiring movies and books that showcase how, in the Wild West, Political and economic disputes were often settled with bullets. Number 17. Imagine facing the brutal heat of the Old West with no refrigeration or even a drop of safe drinking water. To survive, some cowboys dared to let cow or goat milk ferment slowly, creating a sour, curdled drink they called curdled cow. While it sounds unappetizing, this strange liquid was nutritious and lasted longer than fresh milk. Some say they would shake their canteens while riding to speed up the fermentation process. Brave or reckless? In the end, extreme necessity drove men and women to come up with bizarre but essential solutions to survive in a land where supplies were scarce. Number 18. Beyond the famous use of camels, rumors spread that some visionaries attempted to import zebras and even giraffes for traveling circus shows, or to test their endurance as pack animals. While there's no official proof that these giraffes ever set foot in the Wild West, the idea of such a towering exotic creature trekking across the dusty roads of Arizona or New Mexico seems almost unbelievable. During an era when traveling shows were the ultimate entertainment, displaying beasts from distant lands would surely attract massive crowds. Whether true or not, these stories fueled legends that still echo today. Reports of a giant horse appearing on the horizon may have come from nothing more than drunken ramblings or late-night hallucinations, but they show just how much the Old West craved novelty and extraordinary sights. Number 19. In Tombstone, a town infamous for its gunfights and dark legends, rumors spread about a Grand Hotel employee named Swamper, who supposedly dug a secret tunnel to the hotel's vault. It's said that in the dead of night, he would sneak in and steal small amounts of gold and coins without raising suspicion. The mystery deepened decades later when fearless adventurers discovered abandoned underground tunnels beneath Tombstone. But was Swamper ever caught? Or did he vanish with enough money to start a new life? The story lives on in popular folklore as one of the most ingenious heists of the Wild West. In a town where violence and deception were the norm, why wouldn't there be a bold thief clever enough to outsmart even the hotel owners? Number 20. The case of George Big Nose Parrott, whose skin was turned into boots and a suitcase, was anything but an isolated event. Imagine the frenzy of the time. Anatomists and university collectors were willing to pay fortunes for the skulls or body parts of notorious criminals. Some of these gruesome items were displayed as trophies in auditoriums or even at fairs, fueling a macabre market for human souvenirs. This trade clashed head-on with religious beliefs and tested many people's moral boundaries. But the shortage of bodies for research, combined with society's hunger for dark and twisted stories, kept these grim transactions alive. It's a chilling reminder that alongside the heroes and romanticized tales of the Wild West, cruelty and a deep disregard for the dead were just as much a part of the era's reality. Number 21. After the tragic Battle of Little Bighorn, where the famous General George Armstrong Custer was dramatically defeated by native warriors led by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, dark rumors began to spread. Some claimed that the natives had pierced Custer's eardrums with needles or earrings, so that in his next life, he would finally listen to the voices of his enemies. While many historians question this version, it became one of the many legends surrounding this epic clash. Whether fact or myth, it highlights the violent cultural conflict between the U.S. troops and the Sioux and Cheyenne, seen as an act of defiance, a way to return the disrespect they had endured. In the end, this theory only adds to the atmosphere of tension and revenge that surrounded Custer's life and death, making us wonder just how far resentment can shape history. Number 22. Seth Bullock arrived in Deadwood in 1876, straight from the rugged trails of Montana, and it didn't take long for him to become the town's tough-as-nails sheriff. In a place where the gold rush fueled wild saloon brawls on a daily basis, his firm hand and unshakable dedication caught the attention of President Theodore Roosevelt, who became a loyal ally. Determined to bring order to the chaos of gamblers, miners, and outlaws, Bullock earned genuine respect for his courage and integrity. It's said that when facing any criminal, his gray eyes had a chilling intensity. Over time, he thrived in the mining and hotel business, remaining an influential figure until his last breath. Today, the Bullock Hotel still welcomes visitors, preserving the legend of what was likely Deadwood's most fearless sheriff. Number 23. Juan Cortina rose as a fearless leader, defending the Tejanos, Mexicans in Texas, after the U.S. annexation. He condemned Anglo-American landowners for seizing Hispanic families' lands and, enraged by the injustice, organized armed revolts to protect his people. He quickly earned the reputation of the Robin Hood of the Rio Grande, hailed as a hero by some, hunted as an outlaw by others. Amid explosive tensions between Mexicans and Anglo-Americans, Cortina led guerrilla forces that took over towns and challenged authorities. Though he faced multiple defeats, his fight embodied the cultural and territorial resistance of Texas's original inhabitants. To this day, opinions remain divided. Some see him as a villain, others as a patriot. Either way, Juan Cortina represents the intensity and complexity of a Wild West constantly on the brink of rebellion. Number 24. The legendary Meteor crater deep in the heart of Arizona was formed by a massive impact thousands of years ago, but it had already stirred the imaginations of 19th century cowboys and pioneers, when mysterious metallic fragments and strange rocks were discovered. Many feared that stones from the sky could fall at any moment. In nearby towns, stories spread about a blinding light cutting through the night, perhaps another meteor crashing into the earth, fueling panic and speculation. To some religious believers, it was a sign of the end times. To others, a divine warning to leave the area. While there are no official records of deaths caused by meteors back then, the fear was very real. Folklore spoke of crazed cattle herds and ranches set ablaze by celestial fireballs. Exaggerated or not, these tales show how nature inspired both awe and terror in a world already defined by uncertainty. Number 25. At lively festivals and makeshift fairs, daring gamblers introduced buffalo races. The idea was simple and insane. Ride or herd these massive beasts across the plains, despite their towering horns and brute strength making it incredibly dangerous. Riders used ropes and sharp prods to steer the stampede, but chaos was inevitable. Some accounts describe furious buffalo charging through stands, knocking over beer barrels and sending crowds into a frenzy. Still, the adrenaline rush and the promise of big winnings drew thrill seekers from all over, eager to witness something never seen before, and maybe even place a bet. Over time, though, buffalo races faded, whether due to extreme risk or the dwindling population of the species, which had already been devastated by overhunting. But the memories of this crazy, thrilling spectacle remain, a true reflection of the Wild West spirit. If you enjoyed exploring the darker and more fascinating side of the American West, drop a like and let us know which story left you breathless. Subscribe to the channel for more untold legends, historical curiosities, and surprising facts that almost no one knows. See you next time, and remember, in the Wild West, the truth can be scarier than any fiction.